Joining me now, Rabbi Yaakov Menken. Rabbi, great to have you.
Great to be back. Thank you so much for having me.
Rabbi, it's always good to have you. We got a lot to talk about today, and we're going to go to Kushner in a minute because I like Jared a lot. I've met him many times. I've talked to him at length. Really smart guy. I like him. I think his peace plan is dead on arrival, but I appreciate the effort. There's some good elements of it, so we'll get to that in a minute. But let's start with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the other day, saying that the crisis at the border and the way that the United States is attempting to house people who have tried to enter the country illegally in the short term, she likened it to Nazi concentration camps in Europe during the Second World War. What is your reaction to that, Rabbi?
Well, let's start at the beginning. Every Holocaust denier in America completely supports her on this message. You know, it doesn't matter if you're right-wing, left-wing, whatever, every Nazi says, oh, wow, yeah, of course, that's perfect. Because they all believe that something happened over there in Germany, and a lot of Jews died, but they keep trying to minimize it one way or the other. Well, if we can compare the Nazis to overwhelmed ICE agents trying to deal with an overwhelming number of migrants coming in who are begging to get into these camps, which, of course, is the very opposite of a concentration camp. Then, of course, that sort of comparison, that sort of disgusting comparison, becomes completely appropriate.
How is your organization reacting to this, Rabbi?
Well, we have made a statement, and I have personally issued a number of pieces, which you can read on Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's outlet, where I walk through, first of all, that Ocasio-Cortez provided three different excuses for why she did this. Remember that she used concentration camps and never again in that brief Instagram video. There are other concentration camps. There are other uses of never again. But when you combine those two things together, that is absolutely, exclusively, 100% the Nazi concentration camps, because never again is what Jews, newly liberated Jews, wrote on little pieces of paper in Buchenwald and posted on the walls after they were freed. So that was popularized by a book by Rabbi Meir Kahane, who's about the last person you would think Ocasio-Cortez would be quoting. But yeah, he had a book that its title was Never Again. And this is the rallying cry that she was using, and that means she was comparing it to Nazi concentration camps. And she kept trying to lie about it, and I can walk you through that.
Walk us through it, sir, please.
Okay, so plain and simple, number one, she says, well, I meant that there's two different things. There's concentration camps and there's death camps. And she says this, actually, in her second tweet, that they're two separate things, and that's what she meant. In another tweet, she says, well, there are all kinds of concentration camps. In other words, that death camps are a type of concentration camp, which is exactly what she said was the two distinct things. No, they're the same thing, but there are various types, and death camps are just the worst. And the third thing is, actually, she was retweeting some leftists who did the dirty work for her, especially because they were Jewish. But they said, oh, you know what? Concentration camps led to death camps. If we don't stop this right now, ICE agents are going to start using Zyklon B at the southern border. It's just a disgrace.
So why has she been not called out by anybody in her own party? I mean, there's been a tepid response to her. I just don't understand this, Rabbi. I mean, if this was a Republican who said this, they would be hung out to dry. They'd be run out of office. They'd be sanctioned. They'd be kicked off committees. You would never hear from the person again if he had an R by their name. But she seems to get away with it. I guess the Democratic Party is fine with it. Nancy Pelosi's fine. Rank and file Democrats are fine. I mean, how does she get away with this?
Well, think about the fact that she has not apologized. She hasn't even begun. There's nothing here. She is, imagine if this is a New York City politician where there's a high concentration of Jews. She slapped the face of every knowledgeable Jew. The Yad Vashem Museum, which is totally nonpartisan, comes out against her. The U.S. Holocaust Museum, which again is nonpartisan, but they published a statement late last year talking about how comparing anything to the Holocaust is wrong. You have to be very careful how it's done, and when and here she was, indiscriminate, But I'll tell you what the secret is. Leftists, and especially leftist Jews, are apologizing for her.
Why?
Because they are leftists. They don't really care about Jewish issues anymore at all. And I could give you a great example of that, but just here for this piece, the idea that we're going to all of a sudden flip-flop on the issue of whether you can make random comparisons to the Holocaust. I'll tell you, back in 2005, Jerry Nadler signed a letter to the head of the UN Human Rights Commission because the head of the UN Human Rights Commission had taken the very odd step of condemning one of their own envoys. One of their envoys had compared what Israel and Gaza, the Gaza situation to a concentration camp. And everybody said, even though he denied it, that he meant Nazi concentration camps, everybody said, that's what you mean. And Jerry Nadler signed the letter saying that that's exactly correct. And he's the guy defending Cortez.
It's hard for people to fathom why Jewish Democrats are putting up with this and putting up with her specifically. And there's not universal outrage. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We are live in Miami getting ready for the Democratic Forum Clown Show, Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, Hammer and a Sickle Circus, coming to Miami, getting ready for that tonight. And we are with our good friend Rabbi Yaakov Menken, and he is the spokesperson for the Coalition for Jewish Values, CJV. Rabbi, question, and then I'm going to move on to Kushner, who I like, by the way, so I'll just start with there. I get the left now is their ideology is overtaking Jewish heritage, but I'm just wondering again, help our audience understand why more Jewish Democrats have not gone ballistic over these comments.
Again, it's a matter of trading in their values for their partisanship. In fact, I put out something on Twitter yesterday. I'd love for people to look up Why Menken on Twitter and find a statement that I made about 11:30 yesterday, which is, well, I'll just read it to you. If President Trump used the Holocaust to describe a current event, 100% of AOC's Jewish defenders would be condemning him. And I don't know one of her critics who wouldn't cry foul then as well, which is the difference between partisanship and ideology.
You're right. I think that's about the best answers that I'm going to find from this. But it's certainly, for non-Jewish people like myself, it is certainly perplexing, Rabbi.
Can I give you a little more piece on that?
Please.
Because there was actually an article, and this is not me. There's a Jewish Telegraphic Agency, which is actually a leftist news outlet, news network for the Jewish community, for all these Jewish papers across the country. And they described how Democrats came to a reform, which is one of these leftist, liberal Jewish groups, one of their mass meetings and convocation in Washington, and everybody loved them. It was a love fest. And why? Because the Democrats share the reform agenda. The reform agenda is climate change, abortion, gun control, and immigration. Now, only one of those is clearly there's a clear Jewish position on that, which is abortion, and it's precisely the opposite of the one that the reform movement is proposing.
Read those four to me again.
I use an acronym, CAGI, C-A-G-I, so I can remember them. Climate change, abortion, gun control, and immigration. Those were the key issues. And I got to tell you, I was at a meeting with a Jewish senator, along with a couple of more Orthodox rabbis, and then a bunch of these leftists. And two of the rabbis asked questions about anti-Semitism, and the others asked questions about climate change, abortion, gun control, and immigration. Mm-hmm. So there are people who actually care about Jewish issues, and there are people who actually just care about leftist issues. So you can't get a leftist out of his leftism because he's Jewish, because they claim that being leftist is being Jewish.
Why?
Well, that's the agenda of the reform movement. This is the leaders of the movement. Actually, back in the 1840s, when the reform movement got started, they said, we're looking forward to unlimited development in the religion of Moses. Well, unlimited development is to say progressivism. They made progressivism their religion.
Interesting. It's always fascinating, Rabbi, to have you on. Yaakov Menken with us, Rabbi Yaakov Menken of the Coalition of Jewish Values. So, Jared Kushner, I like him. He's a really smart guy. I don't know if you've ever met him, Rabbi, but he's a gentleman, and I think he's done a really good job. I'm one of his supporters in Washington unequivocally. Now, I think his peace plan for the Palestinian-Israeli situation is dead on arrival because he can't get the Palestinians to the table because they don't trust him. They don't trust the Trump administration. They feel they've given too much to Israel, got nothing in return, and there's no two-state solution, which is the only thing the Palestinians are ever going to agree to. What say you?
Well, I don't agree with you that the two-state solution would ever work, but I agree with you that Jared's solution is not going to work. My own supposition, my own hypothesis here is that they know it's not going to work. They know nothing will work. The Palestinians are not interested in making peace. They're interested in making war. The thing that really needs to change is the agenda of Itbach al-Yehud, kill the Jew. And until they stop teaching in their schools, killing Jews, until they stop promoting in their streets how everything has been stolen from them by those evil Jews, until that happens, these people are not going to be interested in peace. So their leaders cannot make peace, and Jared knows it.
And so $50 billion, first of all, he's not raised it yet. And one of the other things that fell apart here is Kushner, one of the biggest mistakes he made, and he's done a lot of good things, but one of the biggest mistakes he made is he banked on Mohammed bin Salman as this young reformer in the Arab world that was going to be able to drive a peace process between Palestine and Israel. Not going to happen. The guy murdered Khashoggi in cold blood, chopped him up to pieces, and put his body in acid, and lied to the president on the bat phone. So he's done. He's incompetent. So that was probably the biggest mistake Kushner made, was trying to have MBS, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, as some kind of a negotiating linchpin here in the middle. That blew up in his face, and I don't think he's ever going to recover from that. So they're going to have to find another way. But I agree with you. Good try. Palestinians would love to get the money to get infrastructure and water and things like that. But like you said, while they're teaching kill Jews in schools, a new pipeline and a road is not really going to matter. And so there's fundamental issues there, I think, that make this peace plan a non-starter.
I'm with you on that. I think that MBS is a solution, is a symptom, not the problem. Meaning that the entire Arab world is like they're all making war with each other. They all discard lives. There's just so much going on that is the idea that Middle East peace rests on Israel-Palestine is one of the silliest beliefs that American foreign policy has ever had. And if you could look around the Arab world and what's going on in, everywhere from Yemen to Sudan to Syria to the remembrance of Iraq, et cetera, it's just, it's all one battlefield. And at the same time, I think that Jared and Jason Doe Greenblatt knew all of this. They're aware that it's not working. The reason why is because for the last 30 years you've been hearing from Americans, they just need economic development. They need an economic future. They need a way, a better path. It's because they're oppressed that they're being so violent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here he comes with a promise of $50 billion if they're willing to come to the negotiating table. We're going to create development. We're going to make it happen for you. We're going to make it wonderful. When they refuse, what does that tell you? They weren't looking for economic development in the first place.
Exactly.
It's not because they were economically repressed in the first place.
Exactly.
I believe that they're doing this whole thing that people should understand what the Palestinians, at least at present, are really all about.
I'm going to leave it at that. Rabbi, it's always great to have you on. I love talking to you. You're one of my favorite guests.
Well, I want your listeners to know I downloaded your app because I was listening to you telling me how I have to download your app.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for your time and for your insight. Rabbi Yaakov Menken of Coalition for Jewish Values, real Jewish values, not what did you call it? The Reform Movement of the Left. What was the acronym? KG. Climate change, abortion,
gun control, and immigration. It's their KG agenda. They're pretending it's Judaism, but they're being cagey about it.
It's a KG agenda. You should tweet that out and hashtag it and coin it, hashtag KG, and say the same thing. And the other thing you said to me that was an eye-opener is the only thing in there that is important to the Jewish community is number 2, which they're opposed to. So It's really all right. Thank you.
Very, very much so. And please have the listeners check out cjvalues.org. That's our home, and they'll see what the real truth is and what's really going on here.
cjvalues.org. Thank you, Rabbi.